The hall is alive with chatter, the clinking of glasses, the laughter of people who belong to each other. She perches on the edge of a polished wooden chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white against the soft fabric of her dress. The air hums with celebration bright lights bouncing off the mirrored walls, orchestral music flowing like a river, but she feels as though she is underwater, isolated by the weight of her own thoughts. Every cheer, every smile, every greeting strikes her like a distant echo, a life that seems simultaneously so close and impossibly far. She remembers her mother's voice from that morning, sharp and cold. "Why must you always cry over nothing? You embarrass the family." The words have settled into her chest like a stone, heavy and unyielding. She swallows, trying to keep the tremor from her lips, but the sting of shame still pricks her eyes. Tears are not allowed here. Not in the midst of celebration. Not in a room full of people whose approval feels mandatory. Around her, the hall is a swirl of color emerald gowns, sapphire ties, glittering jewelry catching the light like tiny stars. She notices the laughter of a group clustered near the stage, their arms wrapped around one another, heads thrown back in uninhibited joy. She envies them. She envies the ease of their belonging, the freedom to exist without constant scrutiny. And yet, in the corner of her eye, she spots someone across the room, a stranger who doesn't laugh or shout, but simply observes. Much like she does, their eyes meet for the briefest fraction of a second, a fleeting collision that makes her stomach tighten and her breath hitch. There is no recognition, no words shared, only the quiet acknowledgement of two people who, by some invisible thread, understand the isolation of the moment. He is standing by the tall window, the light catching the curve of his jaw, the shadow of thought in his eyes. She feels it an unexpected pull, a curious warmth, the first flicker of something she can't yet name. She looks away quickly, embarrassed by the intensity of the gaze and the fluttering in her chest. A waiter passes by, offering champagne, and she declines, though her hand shakes slightly as she brushes invisible crumbs from her skirt. The laughter around her grows louder, a rolling wave that threatens to drown the fragile cocoon she's wrapped herself in. She wonders, not for the first time, why the world insists on moving forward when her own steps feel so hesitant, so unsure. A memory surfaces unbidden, her mother scolding her for sobbing quietly after a minor humiliation at school. "Control yourself. Stop making a scene," she had said, and the shame had burned deep into her bones. Crying became a crime, an act of weakness to be hidden, and in the years since, she has mastered the art of silent grief, the secret ache behind polite smiles. And yet, here, in the midst of a room brimming with people, that grief presses against her ribs, insistent and raw, as if it refuses to be ignored any longer. She shifts in her seat, the chair creaking beneath her. The stranger is gone. The pull she felt a moment ago evaporates, leaving a hollow ache that echoes in her chest. She tells herself she imagined it, a trick of the light and her own loneliness. Yet the memory of that gaze lingers, warm and strange, and she wonders if he will appear again. The crowd surges forward, and she observes them like a silent film, their lives vibrant and full, while hers feels like an unfinished sketch. A couple dances near the center of the floor, their movements effortless, synchronized to a rhythm she cannot hear. She notices the subtle way he brushes a strand of hair from her face, the laugh that escapes her despite herself, and the ache twists inside her like a cruel reminder. Connection feels so simple for others, yet so elusive for her. Her phone buzzes in her pocket, a message from a cousin she barely tolerates. "Come dance. Don't sit there looking miserable." She clenches her jaw, the old instinct to hide her emotions flaring. She types a terse reply, "I'm fine," though her hands tremble. Fine has become a mask, a word that keeps the world at bay, while she navigates the storm of expectation and disappointment. She looks back toward the window where the stranger stood. Perhaps he has left. Perhaps the moment was nothing. But then she sees him again on the far side of the hall, leaning casually against the wall, eyes scanning the room as if he is searching for something or someone. And maybe, just maybe, he is searching for her. A waiter bumps into her, nearly spilling a tray of drinks, and she startles, heart racing. Someone laughs nearby, loud and careless, and she turns to the sound, wishing she could join them, wishing she could shed the invisible weight she carries. But she cannot. Not yet. She is tethered to her grief, bound by the rules of silence she has learned to obey. The stranger moves, and for a moment their paths cross. He offers a small, polite smile, nothing grand, nothing overbearing, yet it is enough to ignite a spark she cannot extinguish. It is a recognition of sorts, the acknowledgement that even in this crowded room, even under the oppressive glare of family scrutiny, someone else sees her, not the curated image she is expected to project, not the invisible burden she carries, but her true self, fragile and raw. She blinks rapidly, heart-hammering, unsure whether to flee or remain, unsure whether she dares to hope that this fleeting connection could grow into something more. For a fraction of a heartbeat, she imagines telling him everything: the shame, the loneliness, the constant struggle to keep grief hidden. But the words die on her lips, swallowed by fear and habit. Music swells, the crescendo of a string quartet filling the hall, and she leans back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. The memory of her mother's words echoes in her mind again, but this time it mingles with the warmth of that glance, with the fragile, flickering possibility that she might not always be invisible, that someone could see the depth behind her silence. When she opens her eyes, the hall seems just slightly different. Not brighter, not less crowded, but there is a space carved out of the chaos, a tiny pocket where she can breathe and be herself, unseen yet acknowledged. And though the stranger is moving again, slipping through the crowd, she holds on to that spark, that glimmer of recognition that feels like a lifeline thrown into her private storm. For the first time that evening, she allows herself a faint, tremulous smile. It is dangerous and delicate, a crack in the armor she has worn for years. She does not know what will come next, or if he will ever appear again. But for now, that single glance is enough to remind her that even in a world full of empty seats, someone might be watching, waiting, understanding. And as the music swells once more, and laughter cascades around her like falling water, she cannot help but wonder, will he stay, or will he vanish like a dream she will struggle to remember in the silence that follows? The party pulses with life, a sea of voices and clinking glasses that crashes against the fragile walls she has built around herself. She steps through the entrance with hesitant grace, a scent of fresh flowers mingling with the faint perfume of the crowd. Her heels click softly against the marble floor, each step a reminder of the expectations she carries. Smile, nod, laugh politely, and never, ever let them see the ache she hides beneath the surface. Her mother's words echo faintly in her mind. Remember, appearances matter. Don't let anyone see weakness. She presses her lips into a practiced smile as a cousin waves at her from across the room. You made it. Look at you, all dressed up, the cousin chirps, her eyes twinkling with the oblivious joy of someone untouched by invisible weights. Yes, she murmurs, voice soft, almost swallowed by the roar of the crowd. She drifts toward the corner, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. The laughter around her feels like a distant melody, a song she cannot follow. People dance with ease, drinks in hand, words flowing like water. She envies their freedom, the lightness of being able to exist in the moment without the constant pull of self-consciousness. She finds a small table near the window, far from the dancing and the loud chatter, and sits. The city lights outside the tall windows flicker like scattered diamonds, their reflections mirrored in the crystal chandeliers overhead. She breathes deeply, trying to anchor herself in the here and now, trying to convince herself that she can survive this night without cracking. And then he appears. Not the stranger from the hall before, though he is there, somewhere. She senses him in the corner of her vision. No, this is someone different, a presence she never expected, an anchor thrown in the middle of chaos. His gaze finds hers effortlessly, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, not boastful or intrusive, but gentle, inviting. She feels it immediately, a fluttering in her chest, a lightness she hasn't felt in months, perhaps years. The party still rages around her, but the moment narrows to him and her, a fragile bubble of quiet intimacy in a storm of noise. He steps closer, and she swallows, aware of her own pulse pounding in her ears. "Mind if I sit?" he asks, voice low, careful, as if he senses the fragility of her solitude. "Ooh, sure," she stammers, surprised at her own eagerness to say yes. He pulls out a chair and sits, leaning slightly forward, the gesture intimate yet unassuming. "You look lost," he says, eyes scanning her face with a careful curiosity. "Or maybe waiting for someone to notice you." Her lips twitch into a smile, reluctant but real. "I'm okay," she whispers, not quite believing it herself. The words hang in the air between them, fragile as gossamer, yet somehow sufficient. He tilts his head, studying her like he's trying to decode a secret language only he can understand. "I don't think you're okay," he says softly. "And that's okay. You don't have to pretend with me." The simplicity of his words makes her chest tighten. No judgment, no pressure, just acknowledgement. She has been swimming through a sea of expectations her entire life, and for a brief, fleeting moment, she finds herself letting the water wash over her, letting it carry her rather than push her under. The music shifts, a slower song weaving through the air, and she almost doesn't notice the people moving past them, absorbed in their own stories. He laughs softly, a sound that makes the ache in her chest ease just a fraction. "I didn't know parties could feel like survival exercises," she admits, voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone's so loud, so certain of themselves." He smiles, warm and unforced. "Maybe that's because they don't notice the empty seats," he says, eyes glimmering with understanding. "The ones who are here, but not really seen." The words strike her like a chord she didn't know existed, reverberating through her chest. She wants to speak, to tell him everything, the suffocating pressure of her family, the constant weight of expectation, the nights spent crying silently, but she hesitates. Vulnerability is dangerous, and yet, with him, it feels possible. Safe, even. They talk quietly, voices dipping beneath the hum of the crowd, sharing fragments of themselves like stolen treasures. He tells her about the places he's been, the small joys he's collected, the moments that have mattered to him. She tells him about the books she's loved, the music that makes her cry, the dreams she's never dared to voice aloud. "You make it sound beautiful," he says finally, voice full of wonder. "Even the hard parts." She laughs softly, a sound she hadn't realized she missed until it escaped her. I try," she admits, cheeks warming. "Mostly, I just survive." He reaches across the table, just a touch, and it sends a shiver up her spine. "Then maybe it's time to stop surviving," he murmurs, "and start living. Even just a little." Her heart stumbles. The idea is terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She wants to tell him yes, wants to leap into the unknown with him, but the familiar voice of caution whispers, reminding her of the consequences of hope, of trust, of daring to feel. A sudden commotion from the dance floor draws their attention, a bottle tipping over, someone laughing too loudly, another voice raised in argument. The spell breaks, the bubble of intimacy shivering under the weight of the crowd once more. She glances at him, unsure if the magic is past or if it lingers, fragile but unbroken. He smiles, sensing her hesitation. "Don't worry. We can find our quiet," he says, and there's a certainty in his tone that makes her stomach flutter. Even here, even now, the night stretches before her, full of lights and noise, and yet she feels anchored for the first time. Anchored not by the expectation of others, but by the quiet presence of someone who sees her, truly sees her, in the midst of chaos. The thought is intoxicating, and she clings to it like a lifeline, letting herself breathe a little easier, smile a little brighter. A waiter passes again, offering a tray of champagne, and she declines, though this time the refusal feels less like hiding and more like choice. She is present. She is seen. And for a brief, radiant moment, the party is no longer a trial, but a stage upon which she begins to exist not as a shadow, but as herself. But even as the warmth spreads through her chest, there is a flicker of fear, small and insistent, whispering that all moments are fleeting, that he might vanish, that she might return to the corners of the world where no one notices the empty seats. She swallows hard, aware of the fragility of hope, yet unwilling to let go of the tiny spark he has ignited. And as she watches him laugh quietly at something only they seem to understand, she realizes that tonight, for the first time in a long time, the ache of being unseen has softened just enough to allow something else, something dangerous, something tender to take root. She sits on the park bench, the late afternoon sunlight filtering through the branches, dusting the ground with golden patterns. The world moves around her, children chasing kites, joggers tracing the winding paths, dogs barking and leaping in joyful abandon. But she feels as though she exists in a separate, quieter dimension. The weight of yesterday's party still lingers in her chest, a mixture of exhilaration and fear, and she turns her gaze to the horizon, watching shadows stretch and mingle. Then she sees him. Not like before in the crowded hall or the noisy party, but here in the serene quiet of the park. He is standing across the path, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed yet deliberate, as if he belongs to this moment as much as she does. Their eyes meet, and the familiar flutter returns, sharper now, as though her heart recognizes him before her mind does. It is in his eyes that she finds herself caught, a calm intensity that pierces through her carefully constructed walls. They are gentle, yes, but not weak, observant, thoughtful, almost searching. He sees her. Not the polite mask she wears, not the quiet posture of submission, but the raw edges of her grief, the longing that tugs at her even when she hides it. And for the first time, she doesn't look away. He takes a step closer, and she notices the ease of his movements, the absence of pregnance. "I thought I might find you here," he says, voice low but carrying over the distance between them. There is no pressure in his tone, only curiosity, and that simple openness makes her chest ache with something she can't quite name. "You found me," she murmurs, almost to herself, yet her words float across the space separating them. "Of course," he replies, and his lips curl into a small, understanding smile. "I wanted to see you again, without the noise, without everything else." She tilts her head, studying him cautiously. There is nothing aggressive in his approach, no expectation, no judgment, only a patience that surprises her. Her heart flutters, a delicate bird trapped within her rib cage, beating against the cage she has carried for years. "Why? Why do you care?" she whispers, unsure if she wants the answer, uncertain if anyone could care so quietly, so deeply, without strings or motives. "Because," he says, stepping closer to the bench, "I can see you, the real you, and I think you deserve someone to see that." The simplicity of it makes her laugh softly, bitter and sweet at the same time. Someone seeing her, Truly seeing her has always been a dream she thought impossible. Her family, her friends, even the strangers at parties, all see her, but not her. The weight of constant scrutiny, of judgment wrapped in love or politeness, has been relentless. Yet here he is, stranger enough to be safe, familiar enough to make her pulse stutter. They walk together along the winding path, their steps synchronous without planning. She notices the small details, the way sunlight glints off his hair, the faint creases at the corner of his eyes, the way he watches her without prying, without expectation. It is an intimacy of perception, the kind that feels almost sacred. "Do you come here often?" she asks, trying to anchor the moment in casual conversation, though her voice trembles with the undercurrent of hope. "Sometimes," he says, and there is a pause before he adds, "But I didn't think I'd ever meet someone like you here." Her breath catches. Someone like her? The words, simple as they are, reverberate with meaning. Someone who understands grief, who doesn't flinch at the quiet ache of invisibility, who can sit beside her without forcing conversation or filling the silence with meaningless words. They reach a small fountain, water rippling gently, glinting in the sunlight. He gestures toward it. "Sit." She hesitates, but then accepts, settling beside him on the stone edge. The world continues, distant and indistinct, and for a moment there is only the sound of water, the warmth of sunlight, and the unspoken bond growing between them. "You know," he begins, voice soft, "there's a strange courage in showing yourself. Even a little. Even just sitting here, letting yourself be. Seen." She swallows, heart beating rapidly. "I'm not used to it," she admits. "Being seen, I mean. Most people, they only see what I show them. The polite face, the smiles, the silence. And I see the rest," he says simply, turning toward her, eyes steady and calm. "The part you hide. And it's beautiful, in a quiet way." She wants to laugh, a sound of disbelief mingled with wonder. Beautiful? Could grief, shame, and longing really be beautiful? Yet there is a truth in his eyes she cannot deny recognition, that pierces through layers of self-doubt and fear. The fountain splashes gently between them, tiny droplets catching the sunlight like suspended diamonds. She notices his hand resting near hers, fingertips brushing ever so slightly. The touch is electric, a spark that makes her pulse quicken, but not overwhelming. It is careful, respectful, measured. "Do you always make strangers feel safe?" she asks, half in jest, half in awe. He laughs softly, a rich sound that warms her chest. "I think everyone deserves to feel safe sometimes, especially those who hide behind invisible walls. Don't you?" She nods, unsure if the tears threatening to spill are from relief, happiness, or the sheer shock of being understood. Perhaps all three. There is a fragile vulnerability in her chest, one she has spent years guarding fiercely, and yet now it flutters openly, unchecked. They sit in silence, watching the fountain play with sunlight, sharing a quiet intimacy that needs no words. She senses the faint brush of his shoulder against hers, and the subtle rise and fall of his chest with each breath. It is comforting, grounding, a reminder that human connection can exist without intrusion, without judgment. "Promise me something?" he asks finally, voice low, careful. She turns to him, intrigued and wary. "What?" "Promise me you won't hide yourself," he says. "Not completely. Let someone see you even if it's just me, even for a moment." Her throat tightens, and she nods, words failing her. She wants to tell him everything, to unburden the years of quiet grief, to share the ache she has carried alone. And yet, the promise of simply being seen, simply existing beside someone who understands, feels enough for now. The sun begins its descent, painting the sky in muted shades of rose and gold. Shadows stretch long across the park, and the air grows cooler, carrying the scent of grass and the faint tang of evening. She glances at him once more, heart fluttering, and realizes that the world has shifted slightly. The weight of yesterday's pain lessened. The possibility of tomorrow's hope strengthened. The cafe is quiet, a gentle hum of conversation and the soft hiss of the espresso machine filling the air. She slides into the booth across from him, the worn leather warm beneath her fingers, and for the first time in weeks, she exhales without realizing it. The late afternoon sun pours through the tall windows, painting golden streaks across the table, illuminating the freckles on his cheeks, the subtle curve of his smile, and the way his eyes, always attentive, seem to see more than the world around them. "Do you come here often?" she asks, testing the waters, though her voice is lighter than it has been in days. He chuckles, the sound low and warm, threading its way through the quiet cafe. "Sometimes, but mostly when I want a good excuse to watch people without them noticing me." She laughs softly, almost unexpectedly, the sound spilling into the space between them like sunlight breaking through clouds. "That sounds oddly comforting," she admits. To observe life quietly, without being pulled into it. He leans forward, elbows on the table, eyes glinting with mischief and curiosity. "And what about you? Observing or being observed?" She hesitates. The question feels heavier than the words themselves, touching a place she rarely allows anyone to see. "A little of both," she murmurs, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "Mostly observing, I think. It's safer that way." "Safer?" he repeats, tilting his head as if weighing the truth of her words. "Yes," she says quietly. "Because when people see too much of you, sometimes they don't like it. They judge. Her voice falters, swallowed by memories she didn't intend to revisit. She takes a slow breath, feeling the warmth of the cup between her hands, grounding her. "They expect you to be something you're not." He reaches out across the table, a tentative gesture that makes her chest flutter. "Then I guess I'm hoping to see the real you. Not the mask, not the safe version. The one behind the quiet walls." Her pulse quickens, a fragile thrill threading through her veins. Someone wants the real her, not the polite smile, not the curated composure, but the messy, aching, vibrant self she has hidden for years. "You really want that?" she whispers, voice barely audible. He nods, a soft, unwavering motion. "I do, I think. Everyone deserves to be seen without pretense. And you," he pauses, the weight of the words settling between them. "You deserve that more than most." She looks down at her hands, the tremor in her fingers betraying her attempt at calm. Her throat tightens. No one has ever spoken to her like this. No one has ever acknowledged the ache she carries so carefully, like a fragile glass sculpture she must shield from the world. And yet, here he is, gentle and insistent, making it feel almost safe to crack, almost acceptable to let a sliver of herself show. They sip their coffee in silence, the aroma of roasted beans and caramel mingling with sunlight and warmth. The quiet is not awkward, it is shared, a language beyond words, where presence alone carries meaning. She glances at him, and he catches her gaze, holding it as though it were fragile glass he doesn't want to drop. "Do you ever feel trapped?" she asks suddenly, surprising herself. Like you're moving through life, but everyone else is writing the script?" He leans back, eyes distant for a moment, and nods slowly. "All the time. Especially when expectations feel heavier than your own heartbeat. But then," he adds, voice dropping to a softer timbre, "you meet someone who doesn't care about the script, who only wants the truth of you. And it changes everything." Her lips part, the words echoing in her chest. She wants to tell him about the countless nights spent hiding tears, about her mother's scoldings, about the way she learned to grieve in corners where no one could see. But the fear of judgment, so deeply ingrained, makes her hesitate. Yet, something about his gaze, unwavering and patient, makes her brave. "I've learned to grieve quietly," she confesses finally, voice low, "because crying in front of others, it always brought shame. Always." He reaches across again, just a brush of his fingers against hers, grounding her in the moment. "Then let this be different," he says. "Cry if you need to. Speak if you want to. You don't have to hide here." The simplicity of it brings tears to her eyes, unbidden and trembling, but she blinks them away, afraid of losing the fragile control she still clings to. He notices, and instead of pressuring her, he offers only warmth, a silent invitation, a promise of understanding. They laugh, half at themselves, half at the absurdity of life that keeps them dancing on edges of fear and hope. He shares stories of his past failures, embarrassments, moments of vulnerability, and she finds herself opening in return, revealing small fragments of her inner world, a secret love for rainy afternoons, the way music can make her ache with longing, the books that have comforted her when the world felt too heavy. "Do you ever just escape?" she asks, swirling her spoon in the coffee cup, watching the reflection of sunlight in the liquid. "All the time," he replies, a faint smile playing on his lips. "In small ways. A book, a walk, a cafe in the afternoon. Moments where no one expects you to be anything but yourself." She nods, a lightness settling in her chest, a subtle freedom she hasn't known in years. For the first time in a long time, she feels that being herself unpolished, fragile, real is not a crime. And the realization is intoxicating. They fall into a comfortable rhythm, sharing glances, smiles, and silences that feel charged with intimacy. Every word, every gesture, is a thread weaving a tapestry of trust and longing. The sun dips lower, spilling orange and rose across the table, turning their coffee-stained napkins into canvases of fleeting light dot at one point. He reaches across, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The contact is fleeting, yet electric. Her heartbeat stutters in response, the pull between them growing undeniable, yet gentle, as if time itself is bending to allow this small, perfect connection to exist. "You make it hard to leave," she admits softly, the words almost a confession. He smiles, a mixture of mischief and tenderness. "Then don't leave. Stay a little longer. Taste this small freedom with me." She laughs quietly, leaning back in the booth, a sigh escaping her lips. The weight she has carried for so long, the fear, the grief, the endless polish she has maintained is beginning to dissolve, melted by sunlight, coffee, and the gentle insistence of someone who sees her fully. The cafe door swings open as a breeze carries the scent of rain from the street outside. She shivers slightly, but the warmth of his presence and the burgeoning hope in her chest keeps her anchored. The day is fading, but the space between them, filled with laughter, honesty, and quiet understanding, feels infinite. And as the sun lowers further, painting the sky with gold and crimson, she realizes that freedom small, tender, almost forbidden is possible. That in the simplest gestures, the quietest conversations, she can exist without fear, without shame, without pretense. The city feels different today. The streets glisten under a recent rain, wet cobblestones reflecting neon lights from shop windows, turning ordinary puddles into miniature galaxies. She walks beside him, her umbrella tilting against the drizzle, the soft patter of rain forming a private rhythm around them. For once the world doesn't feel heavy, her chest doesn't ache with the weight of expectations or old shame. Instead, there is a quiet pulse, a steady warmth radiating from the presence at her side. "Do you come here often?" she asks, her voice light, teasing, though her heart beats faster than she expects. "Only when I want to get lost in the city," he replies, eyes scanning the glistening streets with a hint of amusement. "And today, apparently, to find someone who makes it feel like home." She laughs softly, and the sound is like wind scattering through the leaves, a lightness she didn't know she'd been missing. Home? She repeats, the word tasting strange, yet comforting on her tongue. He glances at her, a half-smile tugging at his lips, and there is a sincerity there that makes her stomach flutter. Yes, home doesn't have to be a building. Sometimes it's a feeling, a place someone can create just by being there. She falls silent, considering his words as they walk. The rain has softened to a drizzle, and the air carries the earthy scent of wet asphalt and blossoms from a nearby park. Every step they take feels synchronized, as though the rhythm of their movements is a secret language only they understand. They duck into a narrow cafe, the bell above the door chiming softly. The warmth inside wraps around her like a blanket, fragrant with coffee, pastries, and the faint musk of worn leather chairs. He pulls her toward a corner table, secluded enough that the rest of the world feels distant, almost irrelevant. 2 cappuccinos? He asks, signaling the barista with a casual wave. She nods, settling into the chair across from him. The light from the window falls on his face, highlighting the curve of his cheek, the soft line of his jaw, the way his eyes hold hers even when he isn't speaking. The sight makes her heart stumble, but she doesn't look away. She no longer feels the old fear of being seen. It has transformed into something fragile, yet exhilarating. Trust. I like this, she says softly, gesturing to the quiet nook. It feels safe. Small, but safe. He nods, leaning back with a smile. That's the idea. A place to breathe, away from everything else. The cappuccinos arrive, steam curling in delicate spirals above the cups. She wraps her hands around hers, savoring the warmth and the scent of chocolate. They sit in silence for a moment, letting the world outside exist without drawing attention to them. Finally, he speaks, voice low and steady. Tell me something you've never told anyone. She hesitates, a shiver of vulnerability running down her spine. The question is innocent, yet dangerous, stirring old habits of concealment. And yet, she wants to answer him, wants to share, even in fragments, the parts of herself she usually hides. Sometimes I feel like I'm floating, she admits, her words barely above a whisper. Like the world is moving around me, and I'm stuck in the middle, watching, unable to reach out or touch anything. And I hate it. But I've learned to live with it. He listens, eyes never leaving hers, and she notices the absence of judgment, the pure presence that makes her feel lighter already. I understand, he says softly. That floating, it doesn't make you less. It makes you human. And I think no. I know you've carried more than most people ever could. The weight of his acknowledgement makes her chest tighten with a mix of relief and longing. It is rare, this feeling of being understood, and she clings to it, afraid yet desperate for more. Your turn, she says finally, voice steadier, a small teasing smile forming. Tell me a secret you've never told anyone. He laughs quietly, the sound warm and comforting, like sunlight threading through clouds. I sometimes write letters to myself, he admits, about dreams, fears, things I'm afraid to say aloud. Mostly no one ever reads them. It's safer that way. Her lips part, and a laugh escapes, soft and incredulous. Safe? You? I would have thought you're the sort of person who'd throw caution to the wind. Only with the right person, he says, eyes twinkling. With the wrong people, caution is survival. They share a smile, a fragile bridge connecting them, unspoken acknowledgement of the walls they've built and the freedom they're beginning to taste. The cafe seems to shrink around them, the muted conversations of others fading into a gentle backdrop, as if the world itself has agreed to give them this private space. She takes a sip of her cappuccino, savoring the richness and the warmth, and realizes how unusual this feels, how unusual it is to sit with someone and feel neither burdened nor guarded. Laughter bubbles up between them, bright and unrestrained, as he recounts a clumsy encounter at work, and she responds with a story from her childhood, the memory of rain-slicked streets and carefree mischief making her heart lift. For the first time in a long while, she notices the absence of grief in that moment, not because it has vanished, but because it is allowed to coexist with joy without shame. She can laugh and ache, smile and cry, and the presence of someone who accepts it all makes the experience almost intoxicating. They leave the cafe together, stepping back into the glistening streets. The rain has nearly stopped, leaving the city washed clean, sparkling under the late afternoon light. She notices the subtle ways he matches her pace, the casual brush of his shoulder against hers, the easy rhythm of two people discovering familiarity in each other's presence. They pause on a bridge overlooking the river, watching reflections of lights ripple in the water. She leans slightly on the railing, breathing deeply, tasting the quiet freedom that has accompanied him into her life. Do you ever feel like you belong somewhere? She asks softly, almost afraid of the answer. He glances at her, expression tender. I do now, he says, his voice low, almost reverent. With you, in these moments, I feel like I've found a place where I can be myself. And maybe you feel that too? Her heart flutters violently, and she nods, unable to speak, overwhelmed by the intensity of the connection. For the first time, the ache and joy, grief and laughter can exist side by side, intertwined, yet unthreatening. It is terrifying, fragile, exhilarating. They stand there in silence, the city stretching around them, and she realizes that belonging is not always about buildings or people. It is about moments like this, shared quietly, unhurriedly, with someone who sees you fully and still chooses to stay. Her fingers brush against his hand, an unspoken acknowledgement of the trust they are building, the intimacy that has begun to bloom in stolen glances and laughter shared over cappuccinos. The world still exists outside their bubble, with all its noise and expectation, but for now, they have this, a sanctuary found in each other. The sun dips lower, painting the river with molten gold and fire-red streaks, and she breathes deeply, aware that the night will come, that tomorrow may bring uncertainty. Yet in this fleeting, perfect moment, she tastes belonging for the first time, and it is sweeter than she could have imagined. The morning air carries a brittle chill, biting through the folds of her sweater as she walks the familiar path toward the small park where they had spent so many hours laughing, talking, and discovering fragments of themselves in each other. Her hands are tucked deep into her pockets, fingers fidgeting with the hem, a nervous rhythm she doesn't quite control. She remembers the last time they met there, how the sun had been gentle, how the river had mirrored their conversation, how everything had felt safe, warm, suspended. Today, that memory brings not comfort, but an uninvited sharpness, a reminder that even moments of belonging are fragile, and that belonging can also leave one raw. He is waiting for her near the fountain, hands shoved casually into his pockets, shoulders relaxed, but his eyes immediately catch hers, lighting up with the same warmth that has become her anchor. She smiles, but it falters slightly, a shadow of unease brushing the edges. You're here early, he says, voice casual, but something in the way he studies her makes her heartbeat falter. I couldn't. Sleep, she admits, adjusting her scarf. Thought a walk might help. He nods, understanding but silent, and together they stroll along the path lined with ancient oaks, their leaves rustling like whispered secrets. For a while, the silence is comforting, a shared cocoon that wraps around them, but then a casual comment, innocent in intent, slips into conversation. You always seem so resilient, he says, half smiling. Even when everything's stacked against you. Her chest tightens. Resilient. A word meant to be complimentary, yet it carries with it the weight of her past, the endless years of having to be strong, to hide tears, to perform composure while the inside fractured. She bites her lip, the memory of her mother's sharp voice echoing. Stop crying. Stop being weak. Stop embarrassing the family. Resilience, she thinks bitterly. That word has been her armor, but also her prison. She forces a laugh, trying to steady her voice. I suppose. I've had practice, she says lightly, though the tremor in her tone betrays her. He looks at her, brow furrowing slightly. Practice? That sounds like pain. It is, she admits, eyes dropping to the wet pavement beneath their feet. And it's something I've learned to live with. Maybe even accept. His hand brushes against hers lightly, a gesture meant for reassurance, and it almost works, but the memory lingers, a shadow over the warmth they've built. The park, the sunlight on the river, the laughter of strangers in the distance. All of it seems tinged with something fragile, something that could break at any moment. I didn't mean to, he begins, but she holds up a hand, stopping him. No, she says softly. It's not your fault. It's just... Her voice falters, a catch in her chest that she cannot smooth over. Some wounds don't heal because they were ever allowed to. They just stay under the surface waiting. He falls silent, allowing the weight of her words to linger. And in that silence, she realizes how raw her emotions are, how fragile the trust she's built feels right now. The sunlight glints off the river in a way that makes the ripples shimmer like glass, and she feels as though her heart itself is fragile enough to crack under the slightest pressure. They continue walking, the conversation hesitant, each step carrying a tentative tension. She wonders if she has overstepped, if admitting this vulnerability will push him away, if he will see her as too broken, too complicated. The doubts creep in slowly, poisonous in their persistence. You don't have to carry it alone, he says finally, breaking the heavy quiet. Even if the world hasn't understood, I want to understand. I want to be here. The words touch her heart, but they also highlight her fear. Can she allow herself to be seen, really seen, without judgment? The thought of repeating the same cycle, being exposed, being hurt, makes her stomach knot. I'm scared, she admits, voice barely above a whisper. Scared that if I let someone in, I'll just disappoint them. Or fail. Or... The words trail off, swallowed by the fear she has carried for so long. He stops walking and turns toward her, hands cupping her face gently. His eyes hold hers, steady and unwavering, refusing to let her look away. Then we'll face it together, he says softly. I don't expect perfection. I don't want it. I just want you the real you. And that's more than enough. Tears prick at the corners of her eyes, unbidden and sharp. She wants to pull away, to retreat into the safety of silence. But the sincerity in his gaze, the patience in his touch, holds her in place. She allows herself a single shaky breath, tasting the vulnerability that has become almost alien to her. For a moment, the old wounds feel almost bearable, softened by the presence of someone who refuses to turn away. The memory of scolding, shame, and isolation does not vanish, but it becomes a shadow that no longer dominates the light he brings into her life. But then a sound of familiar voice, calling her name from a distance, shatters the fragile bubble. Her mother's voice, sharp and accusing, filters through her memory like a knife. Always so dramatic. Can't you just behave? The fear spikes, immediate and visceral. Her chest tightens, her hands shake slightly, and she feels the old instinct to withdraw clawing its way back. She wants to run, to hide, to bury herself in shadows where no one can see her fail. He notices the shift instantly, his grip gentle but grounding. Breathe, he whispers. Right here. Not there. Here, with me. She closes her eyes, takes a shuddering breath, and feels, for the first time in years, the possibility of resisting the past. The fear is still there, yes, gnawing at the edges, but it is not all-consuming. And with him holding space for her, she realizes that perhaps she does not have to be defined by old scars anymore. Yet doubt lingers, like a ghost at the periphery. Will the fragility of this newfound trust survive the weight of her past? Will he truly remain if the shadows resurface too often? If the grief seeps in when she least expects it? She opens her eyes, meeting his gaze, and the intensity of the moment pins her heart to the present. He smiles, soft and patient, and for a heartbeat, she allows herself to hope. But even as hope blooms, the old wounds whisper, quiet but insistent, reminding her that trust is delicate, that belonging is earned, that love can hurt if left unguarded. The city is quiet tonight, but inside her apartment, the air feels dense and suffocating. Shadows from the dim light cast strange patterns across the walls, twisting familiar objects into something foreign, almost menacing. She paces, restless, hands clenching and unclenching, as if trying to wring clarity from her tangled thoughts. The storm inside her has been building for days, small cracks in her composure widening with each reminder of past fears and present insecurities. He is supposed to arrive soon, and the thought sends both anticipation and dread coursing through her. She wants to see him, desperately, to feel the warmth of his presence, but she also fears that this time, the fragile trust they've nurtured might not withstand the weight of her emotions. When the doorbell finally chimes, she jumps, heart hammering. She smooths her hair, adjusts her sweater, and opens the door to find him standing there, coat damp from the drizzle outside, eyes soft but cautious. "You okay?" He asks gently, his voice cutting through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. She shakes her head, unable to form words, and steps aside to let him in. He notices immediately the taut line of her shoulders, the restless flick of her gaze, the trembling of her hands, and his brow furrows. "Talk to me," he says quietly. "I can't help if you don't tell me what's happening." She swallows hard, fighting the lump in her throat. I don't know how," she admits, voice breaking. Everything feels like too much, and I'm scared, and I can't." "You don't have to do this alone," he interrupts, stepping closer, closing the gap between them. "I'm here. Please, let me in." She looks at him, tears brimming, and feels the ache of her past, the weight of being unseen, of being told that her grief was embarrassing, that her emotions were a burden. The words hang heavy in the air, weak, dramatic, out of control. "I'm afraid," she whispers, "that if I let you in, you'll see the real me, and you'll leave." He reaches out, cupping her face gently, thumbs brushing away a stray tear. "And if I do?" "I won't. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. But you have to trust me." The intensity of his gaze is overwhelming, and she closes her eyes, trying to absorb the sincerity in his words. But the storm inside her refuses to be quelled. Memories of past betrayals, dismissals, and scoldings surge forward, raw and unrelenting, clashing violently with the tender pull of his presence. "I can't just erase everything that's happened," she murmurs. "I can't stop feeling like I'll always disappoint someone. And I don't know if I can handle letting someone in, only to be hurt again." He pulls her into his arms, holding her close, but giving her the space to breathe. "Then don't think about the past. Don't think about her. Think about us right now. This moment we're here. And I'm here. That's all that matters." She clings to him, the warmth of his chest a fragile anchor against the turbulent sea of her thoughts. But even as she rests her head against him, the tension coils tighter, a quiet whisper threatening to explode into conflict. "I love you," he murmurs into her ear, and the words are both comforting and terrifying. "And I'm not scared of the shadows you carry. I want to be here through all of it." Her tears spill freely now, hot and unrestrained. I'm broken, she admits, voice trembling. I'm angry and scared and ashamed. And I don't know if anyone could really love me like this. Truly, you are not broken, he says firmly, tilting her chin up so she can meet his eyes. You are whole, even with your scars. And I love every part of you, the anger, the fear, the laughter, the quiet moments. All of it. But then her panic flares, sudden and sharp. What if I push you away? She whispers, pressing her forehead to his. What if I ruin this? He holds her gaze, unwavering, voice calm but insistent. Then we'll face it together. I'll stay. You won't have to face anything alone. The words, instead of soothing, ignite a storm she cannot contain. Her hands shove at his chest, not harshly, but with desperate energy. You don't understand. You can't understand. No one can. I've been told my whole life that I'm too much, that I'm too sensitive, too emotional. And now her voice breaks, a torrent of fear, shame, and longing spilling into the room. He steps back slightly, letting her space to breathe, but his eyes never leave hers. I do understand, he says quietly. I've seen the weight you carry. I've seen the fear, the doubt. And I still want you. I still choose you. She collapses onto the couch, covering her face with her hands, trembling. The emotional dam is broken, and for the first time, she allows herself to fully experience the pain, the anger, the shame she's been carrying alone for so long. He kneels in front of her, gentle hands resting on her knees. Cry, he says softly. Scream if you need to. Let it out. I'm not going anywhere. And she does. Sobs shake her body, harsh and unrelenting, each one a release of years of buried grief and fear. She feels him there, steady, unjudging, present, a lighthouse in a storm she didn't realize had been raging inside her. Minutes pass, or maybe hours. Time loses meaning in the raw intimacy of the moment. And when the sobs subside to shuddering breaths, she looks up at him, eyes red and glistening, and sees only love, patience, and unwavering devotion reflected back. I don't know if I've ever felt safe like this, she whispers, voice small and fragile. Not really. You are safe, he assures her. And you will be. As long as you let me stay. As long as you let us try. She nods slowly, leaning into him once more, tasting the fragile hope that survives even after the storm. The anger, the shame, the fear, they are still there. Shadows lingering at the edges, but for the first time, they coexist with something new. Trust. The room is quiet now, only the sound of their breathing and the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. The storm has not vanished, but it has lost its power to dominate. And for the first time, she realizes that love might not erase fear, but it can hold it, cradle it, and survive alongside it. The night presses against the windows like a silent witness, its darkness swallowing the city outside. She sits alone on the edge of her bed, knees pulled close, staring at the faint glow of streetlights spilling through the curtains. The apartment feels impossibly large in his absence, each shadow stretching like a reminder of everything she didn't say, every gesture she wished she could undo. The sound of the rain from earlier has faded, leaving only the faint hum of distant traffic. She traces the outline of a coffee mug on the bedside table, imagining that he had been here, that his hand had brushed against hers in some quiet, unspoken ritual of togetherness. The thought is bittersweet, a sharp ache twisting in her chest, a memory both comforting and cruel. Her phone rests beside her, screen dark, a silent threat and temptation. She wants to call him, to break the quiet, but fear holds her back. Fear of rejection. Fear that her emotions, raw and jagged from recent confrontations, might overwhelm him. Fear that even this fragile connection could shatter with one careless word. She closes her eyes, trying to summon the image of him, the curve of his lips when he smiles, the soft warmth of his hands, the way he had looked at her as if her scars were not flaws, but stories he wanted to read again and again. It is a comfort, fleeting but powerful, like sunlight through rain-streaked windows. But the silence returns, heavier now, filled with echoes of past doubts. Memories of her mother's voice, sharp and commanding, press against her mind. Stop being dramatic. Stop embarrassing yourself. Stop showing weakness. She clenches her fists, nails digging into her palms. Those words, spoken years ago, still have the power to coil around her heart, making even moments of peace tremble. She drifts toward the window, watching reflections shimmer on the wet pavement. The city sleeps, or at least pretends to, as she envies its stillness. She longs for a hand to find hers, for a presence that makes this vast emptiness bearable. He is out there somewhere, perhaps thinking of her, perhaps unaware of the storm she carries tonight. Her mind flits back to the arguments, the confessions, the moments of unguarded intimacy from days ago. She remembers how he had held her when her tears refused to stop, how he had whispered that she was not broken, how he had promised to stay. The memory burns, a delicate ache, a reminder that she wants, more than anything, to trust again, to lean into someone fully. And yet, the silence gnaws at her, whispering doubts. What if the fragility of her emotions is too much for him? What if he leaves as she has been left before? The very thought tightens her chest, her breath catching as a shiver runs down her spine. She wants to scream into the night, to shake the walls, to demand that the world and he stay. But she only lets the tears fall quietly, tracing hot paths down her cheeks. Hours pass, the night stretching endlessly. She moves to the living room, sinking into the couch, curling up under a blanket, clutching the edge of it as if it could hold her together. Her phone vibrates, once no name displayed. She jumps, heart thundering, and then it stops. Silence again. A cruel trick of the night, reminding her that presence cannot always be summoned. She thinks of him endlessly, imagining his smile, the sound of his voice saying her name with softness and certainty. She imagines the small, comforting habits they've begun to share, the way he laughs when she recounts trivial mishaps, the way he reaches for her hand without hesitation, the quiet understanding that passes between them in stolen moments. Each memory is a spark in the darkness, a dangerous warmth she both clings to and fears. Sleep eludes her, a distant and mocking stranger. She wanders to the kitchen, pours a glass of water, and drinks slowly, trying to anchor herself to the present. The clock ticks steadily, indifferent to her restless heart. She leans against the counter, head bowed, feeling the ache of absence deepen, the hollow spaces in the apartment echoing with what might have been. Her thoughts twist back to the confrontations of the past days, the breaking point of trust and vulnerability. She remembers the words they had exchanged, the rawness of her emotions spilling into the room like a storm that could not be tamed. And she realizes, painfully, that love is not only warmth and laughter, it is also the quiet, unbearable longing that comes when that presence is gone. She returns to the couch, curling up once more, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Her mind drifts between memory and imagination, conjuring the moment he will return, imagining the relief of his arms around her once more, imagining the quiet conversation that will dissolve the ache in her chest. She wonders if she will ever feel that safe again, if she can ever let go of fear entirely, if longing can coexist with love without tearing her apart. Hours pass slowly, the first pale light of dawn filtering through the curtains. She stirs, eyelids heavy, yet the ache remains, a reminder that the night has claimed more than sleep, it has claimed her certainty. She realizes that desire and longing are not tamed by time, that absence does not weaken connection, and that sometimes the heart must learn to endure emptiness to fully recognize the value of presence. Finally, she rises and walks to the window, watching the city awaken. Cars hum, footsteps echo, and the world continues as if nothing has happened. But inside her, something has shifted, a fragile awareness that her emotions are hers to bear. And that longing, as painful as it is, also marks the depth of what she feels. She touches the cool glass of the window, fingers tracing patterns in the condensation, and whispers his name softly. A prayer, a hope, a promise to herself. "Come back," she breathes, "before the silence swallows me whole." The room is empty, yet his presence lingers like a shadow of warmth, like the memory of a touch she refuses to forget. And she knows, as the first light spills across the room, that the night may have been long and quiet, but it has also taught her the exquisite ache of longing and the courage it takes to let someone in again. The cafe is warm, the scent of roasted coffee beans mingling with the faint sweetness of pastries. Sunlight spills across the worn wooden tables, creating golden rectangles on the floor. She enters hesitantly, shoulders tensed, as though bracing for a moment that could either break her heart again or mend it in ways she cannot yet imagine. He is already there, sitting at their usual table near the window. His laptop is closed, hands folded loosely in front of him. When their eyes meet, the world seems to shrink to the space between them, the gentle curve of his smile, the steady warmth in his gaze. She stops for a moment, breath catching in her throat, as if the air itself has thickened. "Hey," he says softly, rising slightly, just enough to tilt his chair toward her. "I wasn't sure if you'd come. I needed to," she admits, voice low, unsure. She steps closer, noticing the subtle tension in his posture, the same hesitation she feels herself. Their hands brush accidentally as she slides into the chair across from him, and a spark ignites a quiet, undeniable recognition that neither time nor distance has dulled. For a moment, silence holds them, not awkward but delicate, as if the world outside no longer exists. The hum of conversation, clinking cups, and distant laughter fade to background noise, leaving only the rhythm of their shared breathing and the charged energy between them. "I missed this," she whispers, almost to herself. He leans forward, eyes searching hers, soft and attentive. "Me too." More than I realized. She swallows, the memory of nights spent alone, aching for his presence, pressing against her chest. The loneliness of their recent separation, the fears, the unspoken doubts, they all surge, demanding acknowledgement. Yet here he is, patient, steady, offering not answers, but presence. And presence, she realizes, can be more powerful than any words. "You've been avoiding me," he says gently, a note of vulnerability in his tone. "I don't know if I did something wrong, or if—" His words trail off, leaving space for honesty, for truth to surface without judgment. "No," she says quickly, shaking her head. "It's not you. It's me. I needed to face some things. Alone. But I shouldn't have let it keep me from you." He reaches across the table, hand brushing hers, lingering just enough to anchor her. "You don't have to face anything alone," he says. "Even when it's hard, even when it scares you. Let me be here." Her eyes well up, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and the faint tremor of desire. "I want that," she confesses, voice barely above a whisper. I've been so afraid that my past would ruin everything, that I'd push you away before you really knew me." "You don't have to be perfect," he murmurs, squeezing her hand gently. "You just have to be you. That's enough. Always enough." The tension that has been coiled inside her for days, the fear, the uncertainty, the unspoken pain begins to unravel in the warmth of his gaze. She leans forward, fingertips brushing his cheek, and the intimacy of the gesture is electric. Sparks ignite in the silence, not loud or consuming, but insistent. A quiet reminder that love, when tended carefully, can endure even the harshest trials. I forgot how much this matters, she admits, a soft laugh escaping despite the weight of her emotions. The little things, the quiet moments, the touch of a hand that understands. He smiles, and it's like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating everything that had felt dim for so long. It matters because we let it matter, he says. Because we're choosing each other, even when it's scary, even when the past tries to whisper lies to us. She nods, leaning closer, their foreheads nearly touching, the air between them charged with the unspoken promises they've both been too afraid to voice. Her heart races, and she feels the fragile boundaries of her fear begin to soften. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she allows herself to hope. I was terrified, she confesses, eyes glistening, that I wouldn't be able to hold myself together, that I'd push you away like I've done before. He cups her face, thumbs brushing over the trembling skin near her temples. And yet here you are. We're still here. And that's proof that fear doesn't get the final say. We do. The words hang between them, tender and urgent, as if the world itself pauses to let their connection solidify. She leans in, brushing her lips lightly against his. A kiss both gentle and electric, sealing a promise neither fully articulates yet. It's a rekindling, not just of desire, but of trust, of courage, of the fragile but undeniable bond that has grown between them. They pull back slightly, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, hearts racing in synchrony. I didn't realize how much I needed this, she whispers, fingers intertwined with his. Not just you, but this us. The feeling of being seen, really seen. You are seen, he says, voice steady, unwavering, completely and without condition. And I promise, I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever. The cafe around them begins to stir with new patrons, a low murmur filling the space, but they remain cocooned in their shared moment. Every glance, every touch, every heartbeat draws them closer, knitting together the fractures of past misunderstandings, fears, and silences. She closes her eyes, resting her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. The warmth, the reassurance, the quiet, unspoken vow that he will stay. These are the flames that reignite hope, burning gently but persistently. She realizes that love is not about perfection or the absence of pain. It is about resilience, patience, and the willingness to return, again and again, to someone who makes you feel alive. Minutes stretch into an hour, yet neither moves to break the spell. She senses that this moment, fragile and fleeting, is also transformative. The tension, the fear, the doubts, they are still there. Yes, but tempered by connection and the courage to be vulnerable. I want to try, she says softly, lifting her gaze to meet his. To really try, with everything I have, even if it scares me. He smiles, a tender, unwavering smile that makes her heart swell. Then we'll try together. And that's all that matters. One step at a time. For the first time in what feels like forever, she allows herself to believe that the past does not have to dictate the future. That love, even with its scars and shadows, can be a sanctuary, a place of healing, and a promise of renewal. The morning sun filters softly through her bedroom window, painting the room in golden hues. She lies awake, not from restlessness, but from clarity, a quiet, resolute certainty that has taken weeks, months even, to crystallize. The sleepless nights, the tears, the lingering ache of fear and longing, they have all led her here. She breathes deeply, feeling the pulse of her own heartbeat, a rhythm that is hers alone, steady and strong. Her reflection in the mirror shows someone transformed, not in perfection, but in self-possession. There is a softness in her eyes, a calm determination that comes from understanding herself for the first time. She runs her fingers over the faint scars on her arms, each one a memory, a lesson, a testament to survival. They no longer feel like blemishes or failures. They are proof that she endured, and that she can choose. The phone vibrates lightly on her nightstand. She picks it up, seeing his name flash on the screen. A rush of warmth floods her chest, but it is tempered by control. She doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she lets herself feel the fear, the desire, the weight of expectation from others who have long dictated what she should do, who she should be. And then, gently, she sets the phone down, deciding to respond on her own terms, in her own time. The apartment is quiet, yet the silence is no longer oppressive. It is a canvas, waiting for her brushstrokes, waiting for her to define the day, the path, the life she wants to live. She dresses simply, opting for comfort that allows movement and freedom. Each garment she chooses feels like armor and affirmation, a subtle declaration that she exists for herself first, and for no one else's approval. She steps into the city streets, the air crisp and alive, carrying with it the scent of damp pavement and early blooms. Her phone buzzes again this time. She answers. "Hey," she says, voice calm, steady, carrying a note of quiet courage. "Morning," his voice responds, soft but full of warmth. "I've been thinking about last night. About us. I've been thinking too," she admits. "And I realized something important. I need to make choices for myself, not just react to fear or expectation. And I want you to be a part of that, if we can do it together, honestly and openly." There is a pause, and then he speaks, voice low but tender. "I want that too. I've never wanted anything more than to be with you, fully, without reservation. But I also want you to feel whole, first. To choose yourself, and not just me." Her chest tightens with emotion, and she lets herself smile, a genuine, unguarded smile. "Then let's do that. Let's choose ourselves, our lives, our love, and our growth together, but also independently strong." The day unfolds slowly, deliberately, as she meets family expectations with polite firmness, asserting boundaries she has long neglected. Conversations are careful, weighted with history and unspoken tensions. She listens without yielding, speaks without apology, navigates the complex dance of love and loyalty without losing herself. And with each interaction, she feels the grounding of self-respect, the quiet power of someone who no longer bends entirely to others' wills. Later, she meets him at a quiet park, where the city noise falls away into the rustle of trees and the soft ripple of water. He waits, leaning casually against a bench, yet his eyes light up when he sees her, full of recognition and admiration. She walks toward him, steps confident, grounded, aware of the gravity and the lightness of the moment. "You look radiant," he says softly, voice filled with awe. "Like you've found something inside you that's been waiting all this time." "I feel it," she admits, a laugh escaping her lips, musical and light. "It's strange, the freedom in choosing myself, and yet it's made me want to choose us too." He extends his hand, and she takes it without hesitation. Fingers intertwine naturally, a silent promise passing between them. They sit on the bench, leaning close, sharing words and laughter that feel effortless, that flow without the burden of past doubt or fear. The warmth of his hand around hers, the softness of his gaze, these things are no longer fleeting. They are grounded in mutual respect, in choice, in understanding. As they walk along the river, the sun dipping lower in the sky, casting molten reflections on the water, she realizes the enormity of what she has done. She has chosen herself in the face of pressure, grief, and fear. She has faced the shadows of family expectations, the echoes of past pain, and emerged whole. And in doing so, She has allowed love not to consume or define her, but to enhance her love as a mirror, reflecting her strength and courage. They stop at a small overlook, watching the golden light stretch across the cityscape. He tilts his head toward her, eyes soft, searching. "I see you," he says simply. "Every part of you, and I still want this. Us. Always." She breathes in, letting the words settle deep within her chest. "And I see you," she replies, voice steady, resonant. "I see your patience, your kindness, your courage. And I choose us, knowing that I still choose myself first. That's the only way it can last." The wind picks up slightly, ruffling her hair, tugging at the edges of her coat. It feels like the world itself is acknowledging her declaration, whispering encouragement through the rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the river. She turns to him, eyes bright with unshed tears, and leans in. Their lips meet in a kiss that is both tender and fierce, a culmination of struggle and courage, a vow whispered in motion rather than in words. When they part, just slightly, foreheads resting together, she feels a profound calm. The ache of past doubts has not vanished entirely, but it has been tempered by choice, by agency, by the hard-won knowledge that she is the author of her own story. And he is not a replacement for that, but a companion, willing to walk beside her on equal ground. They remain on the overlook as twilight deepens, the city lights flickering on one by one, a reflection of possibility shimmering below. She breathes deeply, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs, feeling alive in a way she has not in years. The weight of expectation, the shadows of grief, the fear of heartbreak, they all exist, but they no longer define her.